Hello and welcome to another edition of the Reality Vomit Podcast, an extension of the Vomit series of podcasts. As always, I'm your host, Mac Taylor, here to talk to you guys today about more Big Brother United Kingdom Season 1. Or if you don't like saying a whole bunch of words in a row, BBUK S1. So we are going to be covering Day 8, which is also the day they bring the psychologists into babble about why they went to college. And we're going to cover that day all the way through the first set of nominations and the reactions to said nominations. We're actually getting something happening in the game. Because while it more resembles the real world in structure, it is a game. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So Anna and Nicola discussed, Anna had this dream that she was like a stylist to the queen. This is not something that happens in America. People don't dream about being the stylist of, now I guess President Biden, but at the time President Trump or President Obama. It's not a common thing, but the Queen is a little more commonly discussed, I think, in a non-political way, just like, oh, bless the Queen. And Sada is worried that she's being targeted by the boys. And actually, she is 100% correct that she is being targeted by the boys. But she is part of the reason this male-female contingency has started in the house is because she, Nicola, and Anna have promised to vote for men. And they're always hanging out with each other. Well, more particularly, Nicola, Caroline, and Sada, they are the ones who are always together. They're not mixing it up with the guys most of the time. They're with each other, and that causes a definite divide in the house. Because a lot of the other guys, that they do have other conversations with people like Mel and even Anna to a certain extent, and they're in groups at times, but it just feels like they're complaining about how there's a male and female divide, but you're also part of the reason there is a male and female divide in the house. And then we meet the doctors. I only wrote one of their names down. We get Dr. Peter Collette, who's like, the sex is aligning is a very natural response where at its core, we are drawn to the same sex in these high-intensity situations. There's a lot of just, we the viewers can put two and two together on why things are happening, I don't have a degree in anything. Yeah, I can watch this show and talk to you in this podcast form about what happens and what I think has happened and why it happened, right? Just to put a psychologist on the screen and be like, well, for my years of studying sun behavior, it's like, go fuck yourself, all right? We don't need this on the show. It's kind of a dumb concept, right? Like, we don't need a like, in the real world, there wasn't a psychologist on hand. Like, I would think that Kevin's lashing out would have to do with when he was a child and his father was not around and blah, blah, blah. Like, yeah, we can put that together. We don't need this. It's a very unnecessary segment. So there's 3 of them. And they're all just a bit much because they're all saying the same thing, just trying to make it sound more complicated so they sound smarter than they actually are. And Sada is clinging to the girls to try to, because if she can at least get a tie vote, because there's no limit on who all can be nominated, they can at least get 2 girls and 2 boys nominated, making it a 50-50 chance that a girl or a boy can go home and then they can dominate the nomination votes they're on in and make it completely gender-based. And I was thinking, please, God, no. Please, God, no. And then Sada has the audacity to be like, I think they're just intimidated by my looks. I think I'm just so good looking that all the other guys think I'm unapproachable and I'm unattainable. And I'm like, that's not the case at all. Anytime they talk about you, they talk about how you're selfish and kind of stuck up. That has zero to do with your looks. That has all to do with your personality. And in a game that is based on social interaction, you need, if you know you are a very self-centered person and you're entering one of these games, you need to work on that. I guess she just expected everyone to be like, oh, you're so pretty, you're so great, here's a bunch of money. It's like, go fuck yourself. And we get a lot of them doing chores and shit around the house. And they had to put up a canopy. Like, they asked for a canopy in the backyard because the sun was getting a bit much. And they're like, we'll give you the supplies to put it up, but, you guys got to, like, we're sending you the box from IKEA, but you guys got to figure it the fuck out. And they said, we're giving you a ladder to hang us up, and if you look over that wall, we're going to penalize you because you're not supposed to see the outside world. You're supposed to be very contained. And if you go on the roof and there's people watching, you're going to... But I think that would be interesting if it was like a thing, like in the remake of Dawn of the Dead, when they're on the roof looking down at all the hordes of zombies. It'd be interesting to get that kind of perspective, right? I mean, they can't interact with people. I mean, I guess they could shout. It is a low roof. It's not a high building. So I guess they could just shout to people below. It could be something that they do. I understand why production does this. It's just like, it could have potentially been an interesting experiment to maybe try. But also, this is the first season, and, we'll see how this goes, and we'll build on it later. I kind of talked myself out of that one, didn't I? So Anna explains how she wants to balance playing the game, because she's one of the only people outside of like Nicholas and Andy who see the game or see this, social experiment, as, early Big Brother is called, as an opportunity to like try to figure out how to play and win and excel at this game. So she's, trying to keep the peace, and like, you have to be social and you have to be out there, but you can't offend anybody with anything you say. So it's like you have to put yourself out there, but also watch what you say and contain yourself in a method you wouldn't normally do to try to avoid any conflict that you wouldn't normally care about. So she has a pretty decent grasp on the basics of social strategy. Like I said, she isn't following through to it 100%. And she is siding with the women, and I understand why. Because, if what the other girls fear is correct, and the boys all team up together and stay together, the likeliness of there being a male winner increases exponentially. Now, I understand that thought process, but the men really only thought like we need to stick together when all the women kept always spending time together. So you can kind of create your own monster. Like, if you're so fearful of something to happen, you can almost will it into existence. You can almost cause the thing to happen, It's kind of like in Star Wars, like, sometimes shit just happens. Sometimes you make your own monsters. Like, Obi-Wan taking in this young kid and molding him and whatever, and that turns out to be his undoing in the future. Things of that nature, So I think that that sort of thing happened here. And Anna also strokes Sada's ego, being like, you're just so great, and I think that's why they're targeting you. But like at the same time, like America's not going to vote you out. You're amazing. Why would America want you gone? And like, or not America, sorry. Why would Britain want? And that's gonna be a thing I keep saying, and it's my apologies. But I'm just used to saying the country I'm in. But she's like, Britain loves you. There's no way they would vote you out. And that could very well be true. We don't know the public perception. The first vote will kind of tell us, or the first eviction will kind of tell us where the public lies. Do they want to keep around people who cause drama? Do they want to keep around the opposition and the males? Like, really, that first eviction is going to tell us, it's going to set the tone for what the country is going to be voting. So the house guests they get their second task, where they each are asked 10 questions, and you have to memorize everybody's set of answers. And you're going to be asked 3 questions of those 100 answers. And of the total, everyone can totally miss 1. So, you have to get a near perfect score to complete the task. And they wager 40% of their grocery money, which is, that's a pretty daunting thing. Not everybody has a great, I wouldn't have, with the amount of time they give you, I don't think I would have a terrible time doing this. But, some people have a real bad time with memorization. So to wager almost half of your grocery expenses seems like a bit of a risk. But, sometimes you got to go hard or go home, Nicholas, and I like that they mention it and then they show clips of it. 'Cause sometimes they don't do that in early reality TV. They haven't quite figured out that editing process yet. But you see Nicholas has a lot of one-on-one conversations because Nicholas, I think, is playing this game sometimes a little too hard for the format. But if this was like Big Brother 2, Nicholas could be considered probably one of the greater players of all time. This guy is way ahead of the ball when it comes to strategy because he reminds me of Dan Giesling with his strategy. And, Dan Giesling didn't play till season 10. This is 2000. This is but even before Dr. Will. He uses the one-on-one interactions with people and tries to constantly ask them questions. And so it gets them talking about themselves, and he discloses very little information. So what this does is they tend to get comfortable and tell you everything that's on their mind, and you don't have to disclose any information, and they feel like they can trust you. Dan did this a lot in season 10 and especially in 14. He focused listen to Ian talk about Pokemon for hours and hours and hours. Listen to Brittany, and he would ask her on your 8th birthday, how was that? And things like that. And he would just constantly keep the conversation, from the other person, because people 9 times out of 10 want to talk about themselves. So if you let them do that, then they trust you organically. It's natural. It's not forced. And so in a game like this, especially when the house guests are nominating, everyone gets 2 nomination votes. If everyone loves Nicholas, they won't nominate him, and he won't touch the block, and he could potentially cruise to the end of the game. That is it's a very solid strategy, and honestly, for being this early, this is the first season of Big Brother, because it was airing around the time that BBUS was. He's a revolutionary, but sadly, all you can do in this format is make friends. You can't, make moves with HOHs and manipulate people's decisions and pit people against each other. But he plays like it's that way. And I think it's a damn shame that he never got to play that format because I think this guy is tremendous. And the only person the one-on-one multiple question strategy does not work with is Mel. Because Mel is a person that likes to talk, get people talking too. So they both just end up kind of talking each other into a corner. Because I think Mel is actually a surprisingly decent player as well. Because for being season 1 and also not being HOH and POV format, I didn't think there'd be a lot of people I thought would play that game well. And while Andy is kind of trying to flirt with Mel to get her way, Mel's flirting with Andy to get her way too. She wants to side with the guys because she is not close with Caroline and Sada and Nicola. And honestly, she shouldn't be because they talk shit about her all the time. And during the task, when they're talking through the questions, Mel is always the person that tries to take charge of the situation. She's always trying to tell people how to do it. She's not as sneaky about her, wanting to control the flow of things like Nicholas is. But Anna quickly, I couldn't. I think it was about at least 1 to 2 days. She got all the questions down in her head, so she has a very impressive memory. And then we get a fun little scene where Mel is helping Darren with his phobia of chickens, and he actually touches one. He's making progress. I love Darren a lot too. See, I was also worried with this being so old and not, with the different countries' idealisms. And, not in the format that I'm used to watching Big Brother in. I was a little worried, same thing with the real world, that I wouldn't be interested in the people and therefore just not have anything to watch, just kind of be slugging my way through it. But it actually has turned out to be rather interesting because Darren's an interesting character because he is the only parent in the house. And even though he's not the oldest person in the house, Caroline is the oldest person in the house, he feels like the dad of the group. But everyone loves him. He has a great personality. Like with this chicken thing. He tries. He puts himself out there. It's just when it comes to a lot of the sexualization stuff, except for the penis, he made the penis, the clay penis. But like the rest of it, he tries to not overdo it and get naked or, shag around as they call it. Because his daughters are watching, which, hopefully the people that are watching it with him are averting their gazes when things get a little racy. But, he's trying to be like, I got to go home to my kids, and one day when they're older, they'll probably see this, as people who can take it in, and I want them to know I was a decent person. So I understand his hesitation to dive in all the time. And also, Darren is missing his daughter because his youngest daughter is about to turn 1, and he's missing her first birthday, and that's hurting him. Obviously, she's 1. This memory will never be in her mind. But to him, it's incredibly important. And he's tore up about it. And I completely understand, but I'm surprised he went on the show at all, having a daughter so young. But, I'm glad he did. I enjoy him. Mel also talks about she's annoyed with Sada because they are similar in a way. And I don't really see it, but I understand her and Sada do butt heads because Sada is kind of trying to control the women's side of the house, and Mel is, the opposition to that, and Sada is frustrated that she cannot do anything with Mel. Andrew's birthday is also approaching, and he's like, they're like, hey, you'll always remember where you were in your 24th birthday. And he's like, well, on my 23rd birthday, I had a 3-way with a couple. So apparently he was at a bar and flirted with a woman, and then her husband showed up, and he was like, oh, dude, I'm sorry, I didn't know. And he's like, no, you want to come back with us? And he didn't specify if it was just 2 dudes fucking 1 chick, or it was everybody was fucking each other. That was not specified. And I couldn't say that I wasn't a little. I was like, how did that go? He said, and I never saw them again. I'm like, which tends to happen. But anyway, that's how he spent his last birthday. So even spending this birthday now in the Big Brother house might not compare to whatever the hell that experience was. Caroline is having tea withdrawals because they're running low on tea bags. Brits love their tea. And it says she drinks 20 cups of tea a day. I'm like, no fucking wonder they ran out of tea so fast. That's a lot of fucking tea in a day. I don't even drink 20 cups of water in a day, okay? That's a lot of fluid. Like, how often is this bitch urinating? Like, Jesus Christ, that's a lot of tea. And so her and Andy kind of have an argument about cutting back on the tea. And he's like, if you reused the tea bags, wouldn't have this problem. Or if you didn't drink all this, that amount of tea, you wouldn't have this problem. And she's like, I'll have tea when I want to have tea. And he's like, no, you won't, because we don't fucking have any, because you drank it all. He's got a point. And then the group talks about tattoos. Because sometimes Big Brother gives them tasks to talk about as a group, right? And this one was tattoos and piercings. Nicola has a decent amount of tats and pierces. Everybody tends to have at least like one tattoo in this group. Nicola has the only like thing that they talk about that's worth mentioning is Nicola got her tongue pierced in like a kind of a shady like alleyway kind of deal. And like half her tongue turned green and it was all infected. And then she went back and got it done again by the same person. And I was like, oh man, this girl, she lives her life, she lives her life her way, and I can't knock her for that at all. It's just, damn, some of the things she says, it's like, someone should have been there to tell you that might not have been a great idea. And the other girls, mostly speaking of the trio, which I'm going to try to refer to them as the trio, but that refers to Nicola, Sada, and Caroline. They're jealous of Mel's bond with the guys, and they say it. They're like, why is Mel always hanging out with the guys? What do the guys see in her they don't see in us? Like, really, their hatred of Mel is just jealousy that she has a decent relationship with the men in the house. And she's like, she must be. They basically low key call her a slut a couple of times, and it's like that's not. I mean, she's flirting with Andy. She's getting a little romantic with Andy, but like Nicholas and Tom and Craig and Darren, she's just friendly with. She has conversations with them. And if you weren't in your room with each other all the time, you could have these conversations with those guys too. It's not that she's fucking them, and it's not that, and even if she was, it's none of your goddamn business, but God, I got mad and got off my topic. This game is all about who wants it more sometimes. Who's willing to take all... It's just like anything in life. Some things like having a career in podcasting and entertainment. It's hard to do. You got to grind at it. A lot of the times it'll come down to who's willing to do the dirty work. Who's ready to spend hours on hours on hours doing this business, right? And that's the same thing with Big Brother, because Big Brother, in a way, is a microcosm of all life. Whoever is willing to do the most work, to put in the amount of effort it takes to manage these relationships and work through it until the end, is going to reap the reward at the end of the game. That's mostly how it goes. Obviously, when we have juries and Americanized versions of the seasons, things don't always shake out the way the viewer would want them to. But at the end of the day, those who take the time to do what it takes to make it to the end and have made a decent amount of connections, did not burn all their bridges, they'll win a lot of the times, okay? So, Mel is putting in the work. And also, I think she does genuinely get along with a lot of these guys. She says she naturally does. It's easier for her to be friends with guys than girls. And this shit kind of proves why that is, because the girls are just always talking shit about her. The only one who doesn't is Anna. So, she's willing to go around and make these relationships so she doesn't get nominated. You can't blame her for that. And everyone's also getting used to being naked around each other because the cameras are everywhere and you're all living in a small space. Like, you're gonna get, you have to change and shower and all that business. Like, you're just gonna have to get used to it, So that's something they talk about. And the girls, the trio, I should say, they think Tom is boring because he's so shy, and Andy is arrogant, and that's who they would like to try to nominate, as Tom is just not interesting to talk to, and Andy is they think a little obnoxious. And they're also making their grocery list for the week. They're more careful this time, They don't want to do what they did last week, right? But Sada wants tofu. But she's the only person that is a vegetarian of the 10 house guests, right? And they're like, well, everything else on that list, everybody else, like, we all are going to share. He says, but she's like, I want my protein. And he's like, well, be that as it may. This is Craig talking to her. Be that as it may, the rest of the house want coffee. And you got 9 people, and not everything is about you. And also, Sada, the noms are coming up. Nominations are, at this point, like a day away. And you're going to piss everybody off over tofu. And you should have known coming in. It's 2000. You're a vegetarian. A lot of vegetarians, at least at the time, wasn't a super common thing, right? And you got to think of 10 people, you were probably going to be the only one. So, when it comes to grocery lists, you're going to get shafted. And if they get extra, especially since they lost, like $30 heading in from last week. So, if it's a week where they, like if they win this next task and get 40%, extra, yeah, maybe they'll throw you some tofu. But when money's tight and you got a house full of coffee drinkers, that might be a potential problem. It just doesn't make sense to rock the boat when there's a chance you could go up. And Sada tells Mel, confronts Mel, and is like, you need to chill with all these guys. And I'm like, you're really going to do this before nominations? And Mel is like, I'm not sleeping with anybody. I'm just having conversations. And she's like, yeah, but the other girls are just they don't like that you're always talking to these guys. And it's like, and then you wonder why she doesn't want to work with you, Sada. You're trying to tell her what to do. It's ridiculous. It's like in high school, you got the group of cheerleaders, and the one girl wants to join. They're like, well, you can't talk to these people. It's fucking stupid. And Darren has been kind of removed from everybody, kind of, in his own head because of his daughter's birthday. He's been a little down. And Thomas is going to spend some time with Sada. She's reading tarot cards and trying to read his future, and he's a very spiritual guy. Thomas is. But Sada got all into this. She's like, I can see your aura. It's very masculine. It's a great aura. And I'm like, I'm a spiritual guy in a way. I have my beliefs. I have, I can be down with tarot cards and stuff. But when someone is like, I see your aura. It's very, oh, yes, your aura is very masculine. I'm like, do we have to do all this theatrics like this, I used to be a stage actor, and if I'm telling you to calm down with the dramatics, maybe you are a bit much, right? But Thomas is happy with it. He feels good. He's like, there's a lot of things in there that kind of let me know about my future. And Thomas is Irish, and he has the Irish accent, but Craig has that thick, Harry Potter, deepest South Cockney British accent. And I don't even think I can begin. It sounds like you're doing a British accent in a lower pitch with a lot of spit in your mouth, or a lot of or food or something in your mouth. It's very gargly. I love it. I love his accent. Anytime I can't understand half of what he says, but I'm just enthralled by the accent. And then Darren gets a message, which, Big Brother was very nice to do this for him. A little film message from his daughter's first birthday, so he gets to see her and her blowing out her candles. And, it's very nice to him. And, he's obviously crying. And all the other house guests are kind of like happy for him, but also like realizing like we still got 8 more weeks without being with our families. This is going to be a fucking trek, right? And then there's just a fun, we have to go back from the down, go back up, and they hear music from the backyard from a reggae concert. So everybody's just dancing, playing, to them it's football, but, to us Americans, us stupid Americans, it's soccer. They're playing soccer and just, enjoying each other because noms are coming up and things are going to get fucking nuts, right? So it's day 11. It's Andy's birthday. And the day is like, what a day to have a birthday on. It's tense as fuck. Because nobody knows who's going on, who's going to get nominated, right? So one by one, they're called into the diary room, and they have to nominate 2 people and explain why they did so. Birthday boy's up first. Andy goes in. He nominates Sada and Caroline. His reasoning being that Caroline's annoying, and Sada is like really just hard to get along with and very paranoid. Then Anna enters the diary room and she nominates Andy and Darren. Her reason for Andy is that she has not formed a bond with him, does not feel any attachment to him, and it's very easy to nominate him. And then Darren's explanation is that, he's missing his kids. It's going to be very hard for him to make it to the end of this game. Why not just send him out home to his kids and on his way? And I understand those reasonings, but he's not like wanting to go home, so I think it's kind of a dick move to nominate him for that. But I understand, like, you're trying to find reasons early on to nominate people. Sometimes you grasp at straws. Then amazing accent Craig comes in, and he nominates Caroline and Sada. Caroline is very annoying to him, and Sada is selfish, and a bit hard to get along with. Seeing recurring themes here. Then it's Sada's turn to enter the diary room. She nominates Darren and Andy. Darren again for the kids thing, and Andy again because she has no bond to him. And that's really troubling for Andy, is that the only people he seems to have made like a real genuine connection with early on is Mel and Nicholas. And then the rest of the guys are just like okay with him, and then some of the girls are like, I don't care about him. So it's interesting enough there. Darren then enters the diary room. He nominates Sada and Caroline. Sada is very selfish and an instigator, and Caroline is also a bit of an instigator and just obnoxious. So the votes as they stand right now are 3 for Sada and Caroline, 2 for Andy and Darren, right? Then Caroline enters. She nominates Darren and Andy, putting them to 3 each. She says Darren is lazy, and Andy again she has no real bond with. So again, another person who does not bond with Andy. Then Nicholas enters. He nominates Sada and Caroline. Says Sada is extremely selfish and uptight, and Caroline is just her laugh is awful, and she's just overall just not good for his game, which he is 100% correct in that assessment. So that puts 4 votes each for Sada and Caroline, and 3 votes each for Darren and Andy. Then Nicola comes in, and this is where shit gets weird. She nominates Andy, putting him up to 4 votes, and Tom. So Darren now, at 3 and not eligible for nomination if things continue. And Tom getting his first nomination vote here. She said she clashes with Andy all the time. She has a great comparison. She says, we're like chalk. This is the greatest British comparison I think I've ever heard. We're like chalk and cheese. She says they're like chalk and cheese. Chocolate and cheese. That's amazing. I've never heard that comparison before, but that's fucking amazing, right? And Tom, she's like, I had to nominate someone else besides Andy, and I chose Tom. So clearly the girls didn't get on the same page about their noms. I think the guys very clearly did get on the same page about the noms, or those two girls in particular just really got under everyone's skin, which would say a lot about how poorly they're playing the game. Tom comes in. He nominates Caroline and Sada as well, putting them up to 5 votes each. He says that Caroline is very, very annoying, and that Sada is very self-centered and egotistical, and that's not something he vibes with. And then Mel comes in, and she nominates Sada and Craig. So putting Sada at 6 votes, Caroline at 5 votes, and Andy staying at 4 votes because she nominated Craig. So that means that, Sada and Caroline will be the nominees this week. The reasonings behind her is that Sada is just very bad energy. She's going to cause problems in the house. Craig's reason is she's like, I had to nominate someone, and Craig can be a little lazy, and I just, had to throw another name out there. So, a lot of people got votes this week. Mel did not receive any votes. Anna did not receive any votes. Nicholas did not receive any votes. Actually, I think that's it. Yeah. So everybody but Anna, Nicholas, and Mel received votes this week. Obviously, Craig and Tom only got 1. But, yeah, they still got a vote. So the women are they're very saddened. Nominations are stressing them out. The men are just trying to distract themselves from the problem. But Sada and Caroline get the news that they will be officially nominees. Sada is like, that's totally fine. I'm kind of ready to go anyway. Which is, oh, God, I'm already rubbing my face on a podcast. This happens all the damn time. I fucking hate it when someone says, when they get nominated, and their first thing is, well, I was ready to go anyway. It's like, no, you fucking weren't. Because the whole reason you come on one of these shows is to win. You're saying that because you're losing and you don't want to look like that you're being beaten. So if you say, well, this is what I wanted anyway, then you could try to write it off as though you've won. But you haven't won. You're losing. Just fucking take it. I hate it. It's so infuriating. And Caroline is crying. She's very saddened. But that is the typical reaction to being nominated. I can't blame her for that. Craig, Nicholas, and Andy run into the next room and are just celebrating. Andy doesn't know how close he came to being nominated on his birthday. On my daughter's birthday, he was almost nominated. Actually, if Darren was nominated the day before, it would have been on his daughter's birthday, and that Rockstar reference would have been even funnier. So they're celebrating in the next room. It's a funny little side note. And Sada, Caroline, and Nicola go to their room. They're sobbing. And they're like, it's all Mel's fault. Mel did this to us. And I'm like, yes, Mel did swing an extra vote at Sada. But even if Mel had voted for Andy, Caroline and Sada would still be on the block, and she didn't even vote for Caroline. So when they're like, this is all Mel's fault, it's like, actually, no, it's partially Mel's fault that, Sada got a lot of votes, but it's actually your fault for not making those connections. But also, you guys didn't even vote the same. Nicola threw out Tom's name. Some other people threw out Darren's name. Like, you weren't on the same page. That is very remotely clear. So I hate that bitching and moaning about that. And Caroline is talking to the group, and she's like, it just sucks that being the first nominated. She's like, after this, it kind of becomes like clockwork, and I'm like, oh, whatever, it's fine. Like, there's got to be nominations, which I guess is part of the thought process. And honestly, the way people handle evictions in BBUK is a lot different than America because it's less personal to the house guests and more personal to the country. So usually like, oh man, I got evicted. Oh, I'm gonna talk to Britain and the Queen. That's usually, not the Queen part, but that's typically how it goes. Like, it's more of a fun thing being evicted, I guess. In America, it's more of like, oh fuck, I go talk to Julie and fuck you, and you didn't vote the right way, things like that. Obviously, that is not represented here, but she acts as though it's going to get easier as there's less people, but actually it becomes incredibly more difficult because right now Caroline and Sada are public enemy number one. When they're gone, someone else needs to be nominated, So it gets harder as the group gets lower because if you have like a 4-person alliance and you're down to 5 people, one of the 4's got to go up. So she actually has a very opposite assessment of how the game is actually affecting people. But she has no way of knowing that as this is season 1. And then Sada does the second thing that I hate what the people are on the block do. And she's like, I just want to quit. Like, I promised myself if I wasn't having a good time that I would quit. And I haven't been having a good time this whole experience. And I just want to go home. And Craig, well, a lot of people are trying to talk her out of it, right? Especially Craig. He's like, you're gonna regret this. And yeah, she would. And he's like, and Darren's like, I'm just worried if you quit, and obviously none of us will say this, but the reporters, everybody else, they're going to be like, why'd you quit? You're a poor sport, blah, blah, blah. You're going to get torn apart by the media, which she would. But what she wants to have happen is if she quits, and they say it too, the person with the next amount of nomination votes will have to go up because there has to be 2 nominations. So if Sada just leaves, Andy will go up, and it'll be Andy and Caroline, and there's a 50-50 shot of one of the guys going home. And that's what she's banking on. And that's just such a bitch move. And she's just being a real poor sport about it, obviously. I hate when people try to quit because they don't want to lose. She's like, well, I just want to go out my own way. You were told this is how the game works. You go out your own way, by getting evicted. When you sign up for Big Brother, there's evictions, and the only way out of the house is that. If you quit, that's not your way. That's the bitch route. You're taking a bitch route. And then to kind of lighten the mood, Big Brother gives Andy, and the house guests booze and food from his mother and a board game to play so everybody can kind of like, hey, you got through your first nominations. Let's not be super sad. Nobody quit. There's alcohol. So everybody's hammering Sada. Potentially Nicholas. Nicholas says it in his little side note where he's like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to get her to stay because I don't want someone else going on the block, right? So he's trying to guilt trip her into it, and he does a fairly decent job, but I think Darren is the nail in the coffin. So she decides she's going to stay. She's like, whatever, I'll stay. I'm staying. Everyone happy. God, I hate her so much. So everybody's getting drunk. Caroline has this like way she puts lipstick on that makes the lips look smaller. She does it to Darren, and she calls him RuPaul. I thought that was an interesting reference. Everyone gets fucking hammered. Nicola is like, her whole head, because she shaves her head. Her whole head is painted with designs, and she gets very drunk, and she goes to the diary room and has that drunken cry thing where she's like, my two best friends in the house are Caroline and Sada, and they're both getting nominated, and this is very hard. And I get it. It is very hard to for your friends to go home, but you don't have to vote them out. It would really suck if this was our way of playing it, and now you have to choose between Caroline and Sada for who you want to send home. Then you could kind of cry about it, and I understand it. But you weren't involved with this decision, and right now it's out of your hands. But she has a cry, but also she's drunk. I can't blame her for drunk crying. Some people do that all the time. Craig and Andy, they get runway ready. Andy in a dress, like on the stripper pole, having a good time. Andy is a fun sport. I will say that. He does try to make good television. And Nicholas, oh my God, I thought this is the Dan Giesling way of playing, right? Nicholas consoles Sada, who's drunk on the outside, lamenting her time. And he's like, listen, you just got to walk out of here with your head high. You get evicted, whatever. You can go out and tell the country, I was part of this show. I'm one of the 10 people on the first season of the United Kingdom's Big Brother. That's an accomplishment in and of itself. And she's like, yeah, it is an accomplishment, isn't it? And he's like, you know what? Everybody, I didn't vote for you. And it's like, oh my God, you're really going to say that? It's amazing. He's like, I didn't vote for you. But, and the people who did, I bet you're so pretty and tall and you have a great personality. And she's like, then why am I nominated? He's like, they're intimidated by you, honestly. And she's like, that's what I was thinking. That's what I was, saying to Nicola. And he's like, well, you're right. You're 100% correct. And I'm like, oh my God. Feeding that ego. She goes out of the house, probably telling Nicola and Caroline, if she's evicted, hey, you could trust Nicholas. He's a good guy. And I'm like, oh my God, that is brilliant gameplay. I was like Leo DiCaprio pointing at the screen. I was like, this guy, put him on American Big Brother, or BBUK, make a season that has HOHs and POVs and bring Nicholas back. This guy's amazing. I marked out so hard to this. And then Anna is actually genuinely consoling Caroline, because Caroline's like, they hate me. They nominated me because they hate me. Because she actually is genuinely taking it hard. And she's not trying to be a baby about it. She's just, it's hard to be nominated first. And Anna's like, no, they don't hate you. And then she does that thing where she's like, they're just little boys. They're just little boys. Don't even worry about them. And she does a good job. And then who comes in to console Caroline next? But Nicholas. I'm like, you spent all that time with Sada, and now you're going to come and spend time with Caroline just in case, whoever stays, you're good with, and then whoever goes, you're good with. You're making sure your ground's covered. And Sada even says in her diary room, she's like, I love Nicholas. He is such a genuine person and just really, looks out for me. And I'm like, oh my God, this fucking guy. It's so good. It's so fucking good. And then when he goes to Caroline, he says, she's like, you don't want me out, do you? He said, if I wanted you out, I wouldn't be here right now. And I'm like, oh my God, of course you would say that. That is so brilliant. Because she's going to look at that and be like, yeah, he's right. Why would he be consoling me if he nominated me? And I'm like, brilliant. If he'd have thrown Mel under the bus, that'd have been even more icing on the cake, because he doesn't know that that's the way to feed their fire. But he stroked egos. He covered all the bases. You couldn't have played the first week more perfectly than that. And that brings us to day 12. Everyone's hungover. They're stressed. The nominations are hitting hard. Nicola is just fucking distraught. She is, they're doing what Audrey does in Big Brother 17. They're blanketing. They're, woe is meing. Nicola says, those boys are so damn vindictive, and that's why they're going to win, because they're trying to control the game. I'm like, that's what you were trying to do. You're just mad because you didn't win. Like, your side did not get the advantage this week. You would have done the same fucking thing. And had you actually talked to each other a little better and not been so terrible to Mel, you probably could have pulled it off. Mel and Andy, they're getting closer. I thought they were going to kiss. Like, they kept just, hugging and getting, closer and closer. I'm like, are they going to kiss? Like, is this going to be a thing? And it didn't happen. But it was extremely close. And Nicholas is riding high because he had no votes. Great relationship with Sada. Great relationship with Caroline. Solid with the dudes. More importantly, solid with Andy, who has Mel. Nobody is targeting him right now. And that, he is in the best spot possible in the house. Tom is feeling guilty about his noms, which of course Tom would. Tom is the kind-hearted Irish country boy, right? So of course he would feel guilty about nominating people. But that's how the game works, right? So Caroline, Nicola, and Sada are still doing their blanketing thing. And she's like, fucking Mel. If Mel had been on her side, we wouldn't have... She betrayed us. I thought we were friends. And Anna's like, why do you feel like she betrayed you? And they're like, because we were supposed to be friends. She's like, I didn't even know you guys talked to Mel. We don't talk to Mel, but she should talk to us. Well, why should she be the one to talk to you? Because we're nominated. Yeah, but before that you weren't. She's slowly picking apart why they're angry. And they're like, how do you know she voted for you? Because how could she not have voted for us? I thought we had a connection. She's like, yeah, but I thought you didn't like her. I didn't, but I thought that she liked me. That's how it went. I was like, oh my God, the ego in this bedroom. And Andy is like, why is everyone so pissed? We knew when we signed up, this is what we had to do. Now, until you're in a situation, it's hard to know. I played a small, in real life, IRL version of Big Brother. And it was took place within a day. And we had to do HOH and noms and evictions and all that business. And it actually was kind of hard to vote people out in certain cases. It was like, oh man, I really don't want to have to do this. But I did it anyway. I never cried about it. And so I kind of understand, going into this game, they tell you, hey, you're playing Big Brother. What's Big Brother, you might ask? Well, you're going to have to nominate people for eviction every week and then vote them out. Yes, it's harder. It's easier on paper than in real life. But it's like they were shocked that this part of the game was coming. This isn't a twist in the game. This is the game. And everybody, and this is the last little segments we'll talk about, and we'll put an end to this episode. I know we're running a little long. I know I had so much to talk about for BBUK. They all have to talk about first loves, right? Darren talked about the kid version of love, where the girl was his bully, and then she left and she came back and she was absolutely gorgeous, and he all his friends wanted to get with her and he talked to her, and that's actually the mother of his kids, the woman who he's not with her anymore, but they have a good relationship and they had their kids together. So it's kind of interesting. His first love actually they have reproduced. Tom talking about walking a girl 18 miles. I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ. I would walk 500 miles and that's kind of how what I envisioned with that one. And Craig actually had a very good story about he dated this girl for 5 years. They never fought. It was a perfect relationship, but they both were young and he wanted to start his business and live his life. She wanted to experience things in her life as single people, not having anything to tie each other down because they didn't want to get married. And then 10, 20 years down the road being like, I could have done this if I wasn't with you. They didn't want to resent each other. And so he said, we're still best friends, but we were living our own lives. And then in the future, I do genuinely believe we'll get married and have kids when we're ready for our relationship. And I said, that is the coolest thing I think I have ever heard in my entire life. I don't even know if I could 100% do that. Like, loving someone so much, but being like, let's go and grow as people, be friends, hang out all the time or whatever, just not tie each other down. And then, like, you date other people, I date other people, whatever. And then when the time comes and we think we've had our fill of adventure and being young and we're ready to settle down, we'll settle down together. Like, that's a fucking beautiful thing, right? So I was touched by that. And he even says, like, in his diary room, like, oh, I would do it now. And I kind of said that on TV, but I don't want her to think that I want to do it now because she just started a career and I want her to get it all out of her system. And I'm on her side. Now I want her to wait till it's time. And I'm like, God damn it, Craig, you beautiful, thick accented bastard. I love you. And Nicholas tells this grand story of love and adventure, right? And everyone's like, oh my God, that story, like, that really made me close to Nicholas. I felt like I know Nicholas. Like, everyone kept saying that, especially the girls, like Nicola and Caroline and Sada. And he pulls Andy into the room, and he's like, oh, I just want to let you know. He's like, dude, that story was amazing. Like, that was awesome. He's like, yeah, I made it up. He's like, what? He's like, yeah, I'm just going to let you know, like, there's some shreds of that happened, you know, but, like, especially, like, the grandiose moments, I just totally made that up. I took a very small incident story and made it a big story to get people to trust me. And I'm like, oh my God, that is fucking amazing. That's a Dr. Will move right there. Just lie, and, you know, write it off. And I was kind of sad he told Andy because, like, that's something you keep to yourself until the end of the season. That's a diary room moment. So I was kind of like, ooh, man, you're really trusting someone with that. But damn, that was awesome. Like, what a fucking bold move. And Andy and Nicholas, they plot the order in which they want to send everybody home. And while they're doing that, it cuts to the blanketing trio singing songs and Nicola dancing very goofily to the songs that they're singing while kind of crying about who's going home. So that is BBUK, guys. It has actually been a lot of fun. I didn't expect it to be this energized in this podcast, but it's been a doozy. Stay tuned next time where hopefully we'll be able to cover the first eviction. We'll see how long some of the episodes are. And don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. We got plenty of podcasts coming in 2021 and also other videos, other things, other short films. Guys, it's going to be a great year. We had a doozy of a year before, and it's time to buckle down, get that workload done. Also, you know, guys, I really appreciate everybody that watches and listens to these and supports me in the future. Stay safe, and most importantly, stay nerdy. I'm Mac Taylor. Until next time.